Hey everybody, Matt Johnston here, back with some more information about accommodations in the Americans with Disabilities Act. Before we get started, I really would appreciate it if you'd click the subscribe button that you see down below. It would be very nice so that I can continue disseminating some of these messages. And if you click the bell, you'll get a little notification email when we have updated content. So just before the end of the year in 2021, a court handed down a decision that on the face of it might seem a little counterintuitive, but it is possible. In this particular case, an employee required an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act regarding some vaccinations, not COVID vaccinations. And in the past, the employer had accommodated these requests for accommodations. But it turns out that in this particular case, the vaccination didn't work. So, that happens in a medical context. I don't know enough about medicine to know that that's the case, but when they tell you it's only about 99% effective, that means 1 out of 100 times that vaccine is not going to be effective, and you're going to get whatever disease you're trying to vaccinate against. Based upon my recollection of this case, it was a flu vaccine, and the employee ended up getting the flu. But she ended up suing because the requested accommodation wasn't effective. And that brings up an interesting question. Does the requested accommodation under the Americans with Disability Act, does it have to be effective at addressing the problem? And the answer, according to this particular court, is no. It doesn't have to be 100% effective. Now let's take things out of the medical accommodation thing, and let's talk about something that might be a little bit more common, and we're going to call it a temporary disability accommodation. So let's say somebody has a car accident and has a severely broken leg, and they've got to have an accommodation to be able to work. The accommodation being that some changes into the desk situation, maybe they have a table so they can keep their leg fully extended or moved in an open area, something along those lines. And this accommodation doesn't 100% effectively accommodate the particular disability. It's not required to be 100% effective, folks. It's just required to be reasonable. So let's assume that our injured leg employee finds themselves now very long way away from the bathroom, and it's painful or difficult to walk from the bathroom from their desk. But the desk accommodates their needs from a physical standpoint, meaning they can sit and work and not be disturbed, not be in danger of having their leg hit or anything like that. That's a reasonable accommodation, and that's all that is necessary in order for the reasonableness to be met. So this particular court concluded that the employer's individualized examination and administration, of the accommodation was an appropriate alternative to the traditional methods or the standard methods. So the fact that the accommodation doesn't work fully isn't really something that needs to be addressed. Although there is the possibility of some adverse situations, some adverse reactions, it doesn't undermine the reasonableness of the accommodation. It doesn't undermine the give and take or the dialogue that happens between the employer and the employee. See, we can't predict the outcome of every accommodation. We can't predict the outcome of every modification. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that it's a failure. And it doesn't mean that an employee has some sort of claim or that the employer is liable for anything. As long as the effort was followed through, so there's a dialogue, there's reasonable accommodations being made, the fact that it isn't 100% effective is not cause for liability. So if you are a small employer and you are faced with an accommodation request under the Americans with Disabilities Act, if you follow the process if you engage in the dialogue with the employee, you figure out what is appropriate, what is reasonable, what you can do to reasonably accommodate this particular disability, whether it's a permanent or a temporary disability. And as long as you follow that process and you're above board and transparent, there's not going to be any sort of liability if it turns out that the accommodation doesn't quite do the job. Now, if you happen to be a small business employer and you have some questions or you have a case involving an ADA accommodation, please give us a call and schedule a consultation. We'll walk you through what you need to do, and we'll walk you through some of the possibilities that you have. In the meantime, go out and watch some live soccer, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.